morning, everyone. My task this morning is to kind of do a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of what's been going on in the curriculum and wider than the curriculum, which is a bit of a challenge with the amount of change and things that have been going on. So I'm going to kind of give you an overview and obviously focus in on the food curriculum and what's happening. So just as a little kind of starter point, I'm going to look at the curriculum update. I'm going to try and outline the kind of what next, where we're moving to, although, you know, things change daily, as you'll be very aware. And at the end, I've just got a little bit on some resources and some information that you might find useful in developing perhaps your curriculum for next year, or actually kind of adding to what you've already got. On your table, you will find a little A5 sheet. There's one between two. Would you like just to grab those, please? So your starter for 10, some questions. You've got 2 minutes between you. Have a little think about the questions up on the screen, and you're allowed to talk to each other. Okay, put them to one side and we'll look at those later. Okay, so what a difference a year makes. This time last year we were thinking about national curriculum, and actually would D&T still be in the national curriculum? We got to kind of that stage. So I just want to run through quickly where we are now. So draft programme of study February this year, which caused a lot of discussion, I think is a good word, in the D&T community. That went out to consultation until April, and there was a huge amount of work done by the Design and Technology Association and lots of other organisations to really raise the profile of that consultation process and encourage as many people as possible to come back to DFE with thoughts and concerns, and we'll see why in a moment. During that period of time, there was a huge amount of work done by these organisations to really get underneath the proposals that were being made and move forward with some of the content of the curriculum. The draft programme of study was actually discussed at the Education Select Committee. There were some quite searching questions asked in May. Final advice to DFE on the revisions to the draft went in May, and that took, colleagues here were involved with that. It took a lot of time and effort to actually come up with something which the D&T community felt was appropriate. I have to say that hard work has paid off, and there are very positive signs coming from DFE that the revisions that have been put forward for the draft programmes of study were very positively received. So that's quite recent, as you see, in June. So looking ahead, the final draft of the programme of study will be published later in the summer. I don't know how that's defined, but later in the summer. There will be a technical consultation then, which has to happen, and then the final programmes of study available in the autumn. The feeling seems to be it will be after party conference season. So that's just a quick skip through of the history. But so what caused the concern? So the draft programme of study, I'm sure many of you will have seen these and read it with interest, I think is a good word. And you might wonder why I've used some of those images around the programme of study. I think without fail, there were very, very few D&T teachers that were happy with that programme of study. And let's have a look at why. So a health warning. It talked about valuable practical skills. Would you teach anything else? No? It talked about repairing textiles. Darning socks? Don't know. It talked about cultivating plants for practical purposes, food or decorative displays. Okay, so are we looking at flower arranging? It talked purely about savoury dishes in Key Stage 2 and 3. So did that mean that we actually don't do anything with fruit anymore, exclusively savoury? It actually mentioned electricals. That doesn't exist in the English dictionary. I'm not sure what electricals were. It talked about mechanics. Was that mechanisms? Don't know. And it talked about horticulture. And great, obviously, horticulture is a wonderful thing for students to be involved with, but is it appropriate in D&T? And I mean, these were just some of the concerns that were raised in this initial programme of study. So where did food sit in the programme of study? This was the statement made about the subject content for food and cookery. Note the title, Food and Cookery. So it talked about learning about food, planning and preparing wholesome dishes, straightforward recipes, and common ingredients and techniques. And the bottom statement actually applied to all key stages. So again, it's actually looking at things perhaps where schools hadn't got access to kitchens, so perhaps still thinking about ways round not having the right accommodation. So in food, Key Stage 1. So let's just build the key stages up. So it talked about balanced eating. Not quite sure what that term was actually looking at, and developing an interest in cooking. In Key Stage 1, there is no mention of the children actually doing anything, which, as you all know, in early years in Key Stage 1, children just love hands-on. So in Key Stage 2, it talked this time about a balanced diet. It talked about preparing healthy meals. Actually just mentioned savoury dishes. Okay, so we're actually going along now to think about Key Stage 3. So we've got a balanced diet, but actually encouraging the developing a love of cooking. I'm not sure how you define that with Year 9 on a wet Wednesday afternoon. And again, it talked about savoury meals. So does that mean that the range of techniques required for other dishes was not going to be taught? So here we're beginning to see some of the issues for what was proposed for food. So a huge amount of work gone into looking at making the proposals perhaps more user-friendly in schools. So the statement now actually is headed Cooking and Nutrition. So pupils being taught how to cook and apply principles of nutrition and healthy eating in Key Stage 1, using basic principles of a healthy and varied diet, and to understand where food comes from. In Key Stage 2, developing that knowledge and skill, and looking here at the word predominantly savoury, so it is not excluding other dishes that the children can be involved with making. And in Key Stage 3, again developing the skills and knowledge, so building up the principles of nutrition. Again, looking at predominantly savoury dishes, so perhaps getting away from the predominantly sweet side of cooking. So it's looking at being able to produce food for a healthy and varied diet, a whole range of cooking techniques and other principles used in food education, so obviously things like tasting and so on. And understanding seasonality, sources, characteristics of ingredients. So a complete range of skills and knowledge built up across Key Stage 3. So where does that take us? We're looking at the term cooking and nutrition, which is still sitting in the proposal for the new programme of study. Actually seeing the word compulsory is quite interesting, isn't it? How long have we been waiting for that word compulsory to be there? So it's quite a sea change in the national curriculum. But of course it's compulsory in maintained schools. Those of you in academies obviously will not necessarily have to follow the national curriculum. And I think it's really important, although cooking and nutrition sits as a separate element in the programme of study, that food is still an integral part of the D&T curriculum. And that's the statement that comes from the general part of D&T. So you will see that it talks about creative and practical activities, an iterative design and make process. And it actually identifies different contexts, including health and food. So whilst there are statements which are specific to food and nutrition, it is still very much an integral part of D&T. So that's a quick look through programme of study. I think some of you might be quite pleased about this one. Levels are going to disappear. I thought that might cause some smiles. Levels will disappear, and this is a statement made just last week. They will not be replaced. The new programmes of study will set out what's to be taught, and schools will be able to then introduce their own approaches. And that was actually Mr. Gove at the NCTL conference last week made that statement. Interestingly, that didn't make the headlines, does it, like some of the other things. So here we are going to lose the whole nonsense of levels for everything. Level 2A, what's level 2A? What's a level 3? You know, and all that. I'm not going there. So, levels disappearing. So what about GCSE? We know that the single exam boards now, that's been scrapped. There's going to be a new average point score measure, which is obviously too complicated to look at now. This hit the headlines. Everybody will be aware of the changes from 2015. Initially, we're just looking at what they called the 9 core GCSE subjects. And of course, the EBAC title has been dropped, but actually substituted for core subjects. So no tiering, grading we know has been changed. 8, why 8? 8 down to 1, don't know. I'm sure there's a reason. No more modular courses, exams at the end, and controlled assessments scrapped for most subjects. However, new exams revised from 2015, the first candidates in summer 17, but interesting, they're using the title there, the non-EBAC subjects, obviously where D&T will sit, will be getting the reformed GCSEs in 2016, so something to look forward to there. But there is a statement saying that if the subject does not suit the model of end exams, then it won't be forced into using that. So I think it's kind of watch this space on that one. And obviously there will be consultation through Ofqual on that. So 2016, realistically, if things don't change again, we're looking at the new GCSEs. Okay, what about vocational education? 2011 saw the Wolf Review on vocational education, and since then there have been quite a lot of changes right across vocational education. I've just picked out a few of the key ones that I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, the changes in both Key Stage 4 and Post 16. So the qualifications list was much reduced and republished. Students that haven't got A to C in English and Maths will now need to take that qualification. And interestingly, that has been underpinned by a change in funding starting in September 14, which I'm sure will affect many of your schools. Evaluating the delivery structure of apprenticeships, so the changes in how apprenticeships are built and put forward. The changes in the employment of FE teachers. In the past it's been difficult for FE teachers to work in schools, and that has changed. And also there's been amendments made to allow industry experts to teach on vocational courses. And that's just a very few of the changes that have come through on vocational. Qualifications for 2015 in Key Stage 4, EdXL courses, the BTECs in hospitality, Level 1 and Level 2. And of course all those qualifications are available on the DFE website. So if you're looking at developing and changing what happens at Key Stage 4, the qualifications that count towards the performance tables are all listed. Of course, there's nothing to stop schools still using other qualifications that are on the DFE accredited website, but they don't necessarily count towards the performance tables. This one has also been slightly hidden. I don't know if any of you are aware of this. DFE has made a proposal to what they called disapply elements of the national curriculum from this September. And what that means in reality is that maintained schools, they're still required to teach the national curriculum, but not the programmes of study or use the attainment targets in various different subjects, and for Key Stage 3 and 4 it's for all subjects. And the rationale behind that is to allow schools to prepare for the new programmes of study. So it does free up and give a little bit more flexibility. Okay, so that was just a very quick overview of where we've come from in terms of the changes in national curriculum. I just want to finish off by looking at some resources and ideas that you may find useful in your planning and development. Through talking with colleagues in schools, one of the things that seems to be quite high on the agenda is this whole issue around global education. So what I did was actually think about where might some resources be useful in terms of food education. So this is just a quick introduction to some websites, information that you might find useful. Oxfam have a programme called Enough Food for Everyone If. Lots of resources and downloadable information on their website that you can adapt and modify to use, which is make it suitable for your own school. The IF campaign, it's called. So worth a look if that's an area of work that you're interested in developing. The World Food Programme, WFP, again, is lots of resources on there for you to use, classroom activities, downloadable. Particularly, I've picked out 3 at the bottom. It looks at school meals, food security, giving you up-to-date information, and also looking at special nutritional products that perhaps are used in other countries, which might be useful if you're looking at A-level. This is a really interesting area of a website. It's called the Interactive Hunger Map. I haven't got it live there, but you can download it, but you can also use it live by clicking on those various different countries. You can look at scenarios within the country, so it gives you background information, the number of projects that are happening, but also it gives case studies of the work that's going on and the people that are involved in that particular country. So it's really worth a look for your own interest if you don't want to use it in the classroom. One of the documents on the World Food Programme is the state of school feeding worldwide. And again, I thought it might be quite useful background information, particularly if you're looking at school meals with students. It gives a worldwide perspective on school food. And having mentioned school food, I just wanted to highlight to you what's hopefully going to be published in the next few weeks is the school food plan. If you haven't seen the school food plan website, do have a look at it. It predominantly looks at school meals in the UK, but also there is information, but there's also looking at curriculum as well. So do have a look at that. Some quite useful information, and hopefully the plan will be good too. World Food Day in October. The title this year, you see there, Sustainable Food Systems. Again, lots of information, taking the students outside perhaps of just the UK, beginning to think about work in other countries. Global Dimension, huge range of resources on that website for you to use. Okay, moving away from the Global Dimension, STEM Centre. Many of you will perhaps know about the STEM Centre, which is based up in York. They have developed an extensive e-library, and they're continuing to do that, so right across the curriculum. But if you go into the e-library, and you've just got a screenshot there, you can pick specific areas of D&T, and I've just picked out the food technology ones, and there's 138 resources on the STEM Centre website, including all the resources from the Licence to Cook programme. I've had 2 or 3 emails just actually this week for people looking for things. All the food and the cooking areas are also on the British Nutrition Foundation website on the Food, A Fact of Life. But if you're looking for other things, do have a look at the STEM Centre website, because there's lots on there as well. Science Discovery, a whole range of short videos and video clips. They are American, which is not a problem, but it's just to say they are American, so some of the terminology is slightly different. But some really, really good short clips of mostly manufacturing processes. If you just want something to introduce an area of work, it's really worth having a look at, even if you don't have the sound up. The visuals are really good. It's the How It's Made series. Food Safety Week is just gone, but you will find on the Food Standards Agency all the resources that were developed to support the Food Safety Week. This one is called Kitchen Check. Again, lots of resources for the students to be involved with as an activity pack and so on. And that will stay on the FSA website. So again, just worth a dip in to enable you to have a look and see what's available there. Completely different. I have over the years built up a whole range of images, photographs, information, which are predominantly industrial kind of catering style images. And they sit there on my laptop, and I actually looking through the other day thinking, what a waste. They need to be out there being used. So if those images or photographs would be useful for people to access and use in the classroom, I'm more than happy to make them available. They're all copyright free. They are of use. If they're not, just ignore them. But that one doesn't show terribly well on the right-hand side, but they are actually all images of prepared dishes with the specification. Okay, just to finish off then, let's have a look at the answers. 25% actually, isn't it? It's quite a lot. Any givers on the chilies? Scoville, yeah. It's a good quiz question, that one. I didn't know that. It had a nut in the centre, which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And lemon slices, strawberries, and this one actually surprised me. 12.95, so very, very early. Okay, so that was your starter for 10. So thank you very much.